We have our hockey teams back on the ice. David Quinn says it's not training camp, it's practice. Islanders also back on the ice. And the operative theme from yesterday's first workout, Steve, to me is just an overall optimism and a real sense of happiness to be back together.
I think that's where the enthusiasm could carry everybody that's coming back right now for at least the first couple of weeks. And look, these players are very aware of what's at stake. And if you're a player that's coming off of an injury, you've had time to heal. You've also had a lot of time to reflect. What everybody needs right now is something to look forward to. And I think that's where the players are at. This is not training camp. This is preparation to get ready for a playoff game, just the way you would under normal circumstances.
I'll tell you what, though, I'm like pretty excited about it, not just because we get to see sports again, and we've been waiting for that for a very long time. And not only see sports, but this is the highest competition of all when you're playing for the Stanley Cup. That part's exciting, but we also have two of the three teams in the area and two old rivals in the Islanders and Rangers both playing. And I can't name another sport where every team that jumps into the bubble feels like they've got a shot for many reasons. Valley, you know, goaltending certainly can take you a long way, but also the teams that are mentally ready, the teams that might play faster, the teams that might have that system you can rely on. There's always a chance to win the cup here. And I find that to be the most compelling, and people might want to put an asterisk on this one. I'm not, because of the challenges you're going to face, but it's so wide open. It's going to be exciting, fun to watch, in almost every game you can't miss.
And a key part here, guys, about the suspension of play, a lot of players that were injured are now healthy, and that includes the Rangers' Chris Kreider, broke his foot against Philly on February the 28th, missed 6 games, but is now good to go. And he talked about the importance of making the most out of all this preparation time.
Guys know what's at stake. I mean, we've had a pretty long layoff. We're going to have, what, 2.5 weeks of camp. No one wants to play 3 or 4 games and then get sent packing until January or whenever we might start next year, right? There's a lot of questions, a lot of unanswered stuff in the air right now. So, and no one wants to come here and work hard for 2.5, 3 weeks and then be told that, you know, you're off for another 4 or 5 months. So I think anytime there are elimination games, and tomorrow isn't guaranteed, I think the intensity is going to be there.
So, Valley, it's interesting because Kreider says you got all this practice time. You might as well make the most of it and make a run, get past the Canes, and maybe go much further than that once the playoffs start.
That's why everybody's saying, why not us? You have to believe it's going to be a level playing field for the players like Kreider coming back from an injury. I know what that feels like. I had 2 long-term foot injuries, 1 break, 1, you guys, I've told you, I got stepped on by a hockey skate, severed all of my toes off. They sewed them back on. That was a 5-month injury. But the problem with getting a foot injury, guys, is that you have to use the bike with your hands. So there's not really a way to get your cardiovascular up. You literally sit down, you put your hands on the pedals, and you just do this. And it's the most agonizing, annoying workout you can imagine. It's the longest length of time that you hate training because you can't actually run, jump, bike. You can't do anything that can really help you as a hockey player. You're certainly not skating. But I can tell you that when you come back from a long-term injury like that, you have a new sense of appreciation for the sport. And that's what Kreider's going to come back from. And he's going to be, guns a-blazing, knowing him. He's a genetic specimen.
I can't believe, Valley, they still have that machine. I mean, I tore up my knee 100 years ago, and I had to do that stupid thing, and I couldn't stand it. I used to complain, to say, great, my knee will be fine, but now my shoulder's all jacked up from doing this thing. Yep. But look, that's the idea of the work you put into coming back, is because once you're back, you have that sense of relief. And I can only imagine what he's going to feel once he's back into a game, thinking that it was over for me, and now it's not. And now he's got a chance to be part of something pretty exciting. So, I think that's the best stories in all of this stuff, is the different players who might have thought that their seasons were done, or maybe there was a little bit of a lost hope some part of March. And now everybody's got that renewed hope. But if you're coming back from an injury and you have a chance now to still play for the cup and get right into it, not have to go through an entire season of it where you want to make sure you stay healthy, this is jump, hit the ground running, and let's go. And if anybody is more prepared for that, it's somebody that spent a lot of time doing rehab and working to get himself back.
You know what another interesting storyline is too, Alan, is what about the teams like the Montreal Canadiens that traded away 3 players at the deadline thinking they have no chance to get in the playoffs, and now they don't have playoff players that they could have in their lineups that they traded away. It's a funny storyline going into these play-ins. It's going to be very interesting.
And guys, speaking of storylines, how about the Rangers goaltending situation? Of course, in years past, Henrik Lundqvist would be a lock to be the starter in net. But this time around, there's Igor Shesterkin and Alexander Georgiev. And Lundqvist spoke yesterday about how he knows he's in a real battle for his spot.
Also gave me an opportunity to, work on my game a little bit, technically, physically, and mentally. I feel like coming back now, I'm in a really good place in all 3 areas there. So I feel very excited to start the camp, and obviously we're 3 guys competing for 1 spot. So we'll see who gets to play.
So Valley, this is going to be really interesting to watch. Who's going to be the man in net for the Rangers?
Well, this is the interesting part for me, guys. We're talking at a best 3 out of 5 series, right? When we typically have a best 4 out of 7, there's a lot of runway for a goaltender not playing well in game 1. You can look to John Tortorella last year, not pulling Sergei Bobrovsky after the first period when he allowed 3 goals. Then Columbus comes back and they sweep what should have been a Stanley Cup championship for the Tampa Bay Lightning. You don't have that runway when we're talking about a 3 out of 5. I think that between both teams, we're not just going to see the 2 guys that start the series in the starter's role. There's a very good chance we see more than that. For the Rangers, what kind of depth do they have? And is that an advantage? I think it's going to be very hard for David Quinn to look past the lifetime success that Henrik Lundqvist has had against Carolina. I think it's going to be very difficult for him to make a decision on who becomes a starter, because you've got Georgiev that's always been an underdog, and he's always performed at that high level. He's got a high level of will that he plays with. And Shesterkin, when he's playing, he's like having a third defenseman back there. Carolina has to change their forecheck when you play against him. He reads the play very well. When I was thinking about it this morning, guys, you look at the best technical goalie on the roster, I'd say it's Georgiev. I think the fighter that's best through screens, traffic, broken plays, deflections, playoff hockey, it's Lundqvist. But the guy that plays the puck the best and reads the play the best positionally is Shesterkin. So it's going to have to be one of those 3 guys that maybe gets the first opportunity that hangs on to it. I think that's going to be critical.
In the meantime, guys, the Islanders goaltending situation, Ilya Sorokin has come to terms, but he can't play during the restart. Steve, take us through the machinations here, because Sorokin is now eligible, even though he doesn't play, for a new contract next season. Why did the Islanders technically burn the year of this contract, even though he can't play?
Just to get him over here, right? I played in the KHL for 2 years. We've seen the quality of goalies coming over from the KHL right now. They're the best in the NHL. The best goalies in the NHL over the next 5 years are Russian goalies. They bought curriculum from the Swedes several years ago. They put a lot of time into goalie development. Sorokin, Shesterkin, Bobrovsky, Vasilevsky. I mean, the list goes on in the NHL. Khudobin. The list goes on, guys, and this guy's going to be a star just like the other 4 guys I mentioned. The Islanders and the Rangers are going to have an awesome rivalry in net, and in large part, these 2 guys are really close friends, too. They've competed against each other for a long time for positioning in Russia. And, Alan, it's going to be a very exciting crease next season in Long Island.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that. I love the fact they get him in just to get him into the culture, get him around the team, get him through practices, just – that he's acclimated, because you're not going to have much of an off season anyway, once you jump into the next season. So you might as well get him in now and get him acclimated to just even being here in the States and living in New York and finding a place to live and beautiful Long Island and all that stuff. So that's a huge part of it. I think getting him here, you'll sacrifice whatever it is going forward, because if he's awesome, you're going to have to pay him anyway. So what does it really matter? My question is, though, we got to have a commercial with those 2, right? Don't we? If they're good friends, do an Odd Couple styled theme maybe, but who's Oscar out of the 2 of them? That's the part I'm trying to figure out. But going back to the Rangers, what you mentioned about having the 3 goalies and each one of them can play reminds me of that time we were talking to Mike Richter, and he tells that story about when he was called up, and it was Van Beesbrook, it was Bob Frozen himself, and I think it was Beezer who said, 3 goalies, 2 nets, that ain't going to work. And that's part of the problem, because Valley, while you're going through the playoffs, you'll have your starter who's got to get his work. You'll have the backup who you have to keep sharp. That third guy probably doesn't get nearly as much work, but if somebody fails and he's got to be available, that's a big question mark. That third goalie, whoever it is, whoever gets left out, it's a long time to go without getting a lot of work.
And Steve, Han's all fired up because Adam Pellock is ready to go, and so too is Casey Cizikas. Alan is all jacked up for the Islander Panther qualifying round, that is for sure.
I mean, think about it. We were just talking about Kreider. You have a player that you didn't think you were going to have for the rest of the season in Pelican. Look at their defense and look at the goals against and look at really the system when Pellick went down and how that completely fell apart. They had to go with a couple of young guys they called up who clearly weren't ready, did their best, of course, but he became so important to them defensively in that system and their ability, not just in the defensive end, but also to move the puck and get the puck up the ice and keep it out of your zone. He just became so valuable to them that to get him back is so important. It's so amazing. And I can't say enough about Cizikas. I've said this before. If he played for the Rangers, and I know Islander fans hate when I say this, but it's just reality, he would be a superstar. Like everybody would know him in New York. You would love him because he does all the dirty work. He's a great teammate. He shows up all the time. He's the blue collar guy that every team needs, and he's been so important to them. To get him back and healthy, Clutterbuck, that line healthy, that line's important, but also having Pellick back, which you didn't think you were going to have if you had a regular playoffs, it's huge for this team because of the system that Barry Trotz plays.